Welcome back to our podcast, Occupational Therapy Lived and Practice. My name is Femi, and you can call
And
me
I'm
Femi.
and I'm Kenny. Welcome everybody. Thank you for all the love and support. We truly appreciate it. And to all our new subscribers, thank you for supporting the channel. We appreciate every single one of you. If you're just seeing this episode and in our channel for the first time, we'll implore you to go back and check the previous episodes. It's a story that started from it's a journey, and it starts from a place, and we've built up to this point. Thank you everybody once again. We really appreciate all your support. And this is just an online journal slash documentary of our life that we're doing here. We're just putting this out there. Probably, if not for anyone else, for our children, at
Yeah.
least to be able to know what daddies have been through to get them to this point. But in our last episode, we talked about our time in India and how we came back from India back to Nigeria to work on to start work again, and how that learning has shaped us as occupational therapists.
Right. So today, yes, Kenny said we're bringing you back to our story as it relates to Nigeria. After our study, the rigorous study, I would say, in India, and then we came back home to start a brand new life, leaving everything we knew in the past. How many years before we traveled? I think we practiced over 2 years before the travel, and
No,
then
it
yeah, I
was
think
four
from
years.
2009
We
to 2011, yeah, for 4 years, yes, yes, we practiced almost 4 years or over 4 years before we traveled. So leaving everything behind, went down to India to upgrade everything and then back to Nigeria to continue our practice. So this is what the focus of today's podcast will be. So
yeah,
returning to Nigeria, it felt completely different when we came
of
back.
course. Yeah. It's you come back to a country where it's totally different. You spent like 3 years somewhere, and now you're back. A lot of things have changed, of
Yeah.
course. Coming back after studying abroad is not easy. That's another thing because you've experienced a different life back there, and then now coming into a country where, not speaking bad about the country, but obviously in India, you there was no single time that we had a power cut. Well, exactly. And then you're coming back to Nigeria where you're dealing with things like power cuts. That is just even like an example of the difference that you would see, or that is obvious in
Yeah.
coming back. And also, we are coming back now where aspirations of studying, as we've achieved what we aspire to do in terms
Yeah.
of getting a degree. Now reality it's you need to look at building a career, and
Mm,
then probably looking into something like starting your own private practice as well on the side,
mm.
and the master of them all, building a life and with
That's
family at the same time. So
yeah.
yeah, it was a little bit of a readjustment
Yeah.
period.
No, even though something changed in us when we finished our study, at least the knowledge got better, you know. Uh, the system we came back to at that time never changed. It was still the same old, having to, pay for everything you're doing, and people, paying out of pocket and everything. But building a career in Nigeria is rewarding, I would say, even though the challenges are there, but we focused on the reward. That reward, kept us in the, um, I would say, it strengthened our decision making. Yes,
Of
because
course.
without that focus on the fact that okay, after everything in India and all the rigor, what What do I stand to gain? Not just about growth alone, but what do you do to make your life better personally?
Of course. Yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking about when we got back from India and then just adjusting again. Because before we went, obviously we were living together like in a flat and stuff in an apartment.
Yeah.
And then coming back means that obviously people are thinking about what's the next step in life, not just in career now, it's in life in general. So you can't be living with people. You have to live by yourself on your own, make these certain decisions. And those took a long time to readjust to. And I just away from therapy specifically, I had a little bit of I think anxiety when I came back in terms of like it's Nigeria. You come like I said, you're coming from India where also we were living in student area. It was relatively kind of safe to live in terms of security. But coming back to Nigeria, first of all, they at the airport, oh, they were like, okay, we got a taxi from the airport, right? And then my mom came to meet me at the airport and all of that. We didn't allow that taxi to take us home. They dropped us at an eatery, like a bus stop not too far from home, and then we had to ask a neighbor to come pick me up with the loads and stuff to take us home, based off of the fact that obviously we didn't want these airport taxis to know where we live and have the
Exactly.
wrong opinion about this person just landed from somewhere they don't even know. And that just started instilling some like wow, being very security conscious and all of that. That's why the fact that I was questioning all of these things, they they give you stories and explanation of what has happened to different people, and I think that that deposit of stories and experiences kind of like shook me a little bit, and I was so security conscious, not wanting to go out at night, and especially when I returned to Benin from Lagos. So
Yeah.
it kind of changed a little bit.
For me, before I came back, that experience alone changed a lot of things, a lot of perspective about life in my family. Everybody felt energized. They felt that, oh, a lot can be achieved if you put your mind at it with God on your
Mm-hmm.
side,
Mm-hmm.
particularly my mom
Mm-hmm.
and dad. They felt like, wow, the entire immediate family, no one had done this kind of a thing, not even when you have to do it on your own. So my dad booked, not really a taxi, it was a friend of his who has a car, and then he came to the airport to pick me, and so I think on my part, I didn't have to be afraid of anything or be
Of
too
course, no.
security conscious. So I was taken straight to my dad's, and it was really very lovely stuff when I came back. And I felt that I've don't. I mean, I didn't know how my decision to travel had affected people at that time until
Mm,
now. Like I can say more now about how that had really made people feel that they can do anything if they put their
mm,
mind at it.
mm, exactly. Just away from all of those, anyways, as well. Just going back to work, um, was a bit of a. We went there with a different mindset.
Right.
We because you're coming in with new knowledge, new exposure, and obviously we had people on ground already, like the likes of, like we said, Mr. Elainde, Mr. and Mrs. Amore, and all of these other people that has already started hitting the ground running with all of the experiences they brought also from India, and we
That's
came in as well, and then the system has changed. The system we left changed, obviously, because of all these people that has come back and was doing a lot more. And then when we came in, it just blew up from there. The department was booming. Revenue generation was on a different
yeah,
level, and
yeah.
the renewed what's it called, confidence in OT, the exposure of OT also became bigger
Yeah.
in the whole of the hospital, and it was really good to be a part of that.
Yes, that's right. See, so when we came back, we began to approach all the whole practice differently, and that was what led to the widespread knowledge of OT across the entire hospital. That doctors were now referring patient more, and area of practice were expanding. The clinical,
Exactly.
yeah, our clinical judgment. We were communicating differently with doctors, uh, before the knowledge you have about anatomy, yes, we could put them to use, but not when you don't have a lot of area to cover. But
Yeah,
now
of course.
we now have load of areas. Our interaction with other healthcare professionals became better, and adjusting to the resource limitation again. That was another thing when we had to start thinking out of the box, using locally sourced material and everything to make sure we optimize our patient care. I mean, the highest quality possible.
Course. I think obviously it's like I mentioned, we had people that already returned from India back, so the expectation was quite high for us, and we coming back and bringing the hands that we brought let the service expand. Like you just said, we went into areas that we didn't have. We They had the knowledge, but there was no manpower. But with us returning, we could go into all of these areas and help shape the practice as it should.
Yeah.
And we obviously didn't look like the therapists that left Nigeria when we came back.
Yeah. You see, so it was at this point, it didn't take so long for us to start thinking like, okay, now we are back. Can we start thinking beyond just working for the government? Like looking inward. The environment. Many people don't like to come to the hospital. That's the fact. Some just feel like, oh, hospital, when you come, people are likely to get worse or people are likely to but that's not entirely true, but it's just some people's mindset. So we were thinking, how do we take this treatment to them, and which of course is not part of the practice in the government sector, taking treatment directly to people's home at that time. So we were now thinking how to start private practice, to
Yeah,
make things
absolutely.
better, even for
Uh,
ourselves and also for a wider community.
I mean, obviously, private practice teaches you more than any classroom because it's a different ball game entirely. And we are in a setting now that differentiates between an acute and a community setting. Back home, we don't really have that. We have an inpatient and an outpatient service that is mostly all combined into the acute setting.
Yeah,
So we needed to be able to think about private practices where we can help patients that, because of time, because of commitment, and all of that, to be able to reach all of these people that needs the service of OT, and private practice come to mind. And also, thinking about private practice is also we are coming from, or we are in that system at the time, the system where it's not like the NHS where there's free services or services run by the government per se. You pay for your health services.
yeah,
Even if you have insurance, you pay out of pocket and then you get reimbursement for it. So we had to also think about the business side of things, not just being like, well, yeah, you're clinically sound, you know what you're doing, but you also need
yeah,
to be able to manage the business side of things. And I know that you started your talk to a therapist
yeah.
outfit.
Yeah, yeah. The whole idea started in India. So, because I mentioned in the last episode that when we went to this Odisha conference, water conference. I met people who were freelance practitioner and those who were private practitioners were. So, and with the interaction that I listened to amongst, I mean, them when they were speaking, I had the feeling that they were really doing very well and the impact they could make in the life of their citizens. So I started nursing that idea right from there. But I didn't know how to go about this. But I can't really remember how the name Talk to a Therapist came to me. And then I just came back home and felt, let's do this. And then we started, gradually in the immediate environment and also going back as far as the south area or southeastern part, the Port Harcourt area, and even down to Lagos. So it was a massive thing eventually, which we had to leave behind. That we'll talk about more of that if we need to. Yeah, but the awareness creation was where I started because I started with social media presence, heavy social media presence, especially on Facebook, to create awareness about occupational therapy, and that's been so that also helped, to bring OT to limelight, and the more knowledge, I mean, more of the knowledge we brought from India also helped in that regard. I know you also started ADK.
Yeah, yeah, that I think obviously before leaving for India, we were seeing one or two patients on the side, helping support, like we discussed in our previous podcast, even while we were in Port Harcourt. It's just now that the confidence is there, the certificate is there now. You've got the license to do everything that you need to do. The hunger is there, obviously, because of you trying to build a name, a brand for yourself, not just being an employee. You you start, obviously, people will approach you because of the knowledge that you carry or that you've displayed, and you
Yeah,
get that a lot. The ADK outfit came in collaboration with Mr. Adediji, who's currently the head of department in UBTH now, to go into special schools, right? We just for some of our viewers that don't know the fact that we have special schools for children with disabilities or special needs. So they go to a separate schools or there are outfits that accommodates these kids because we're still trying. It's gotten much more better in recent times, but there's still a lot of push in terms of getting getting these kids integrated into a typical school. So at the
yeah,
time, the children having going to these schools still needs to have therapy involvement, and we started advocating for that. And we had one or two schools under our belt that we consult for. We ensure that they get appropriate therapy services, despite the fact that they're having all these other additional like services involved, like the speech therapy and all, but the physical, occupational therapy, like play and all of that stuff, were the things that we incorporated into their program. We brought in standardized assessments, a lot of it. There's a lot of belief that was brought in with our involvement in these schools,
yeah,
and parents started believing again, which really, really made a lot of impact in that area. And it
yeah,
also helped the schools. They were able to like go out there with more confidence to express what they're doing again, and doing well. So that was really, really good. Private
yeah,
practice was rewarding. And like we've talked about in the previous episodes as well, it kind of brings you closer to the family, especially
yeah,
if you're going into different people's homes regularly, and they're seeing some form of improvement. It brings you more closer to people. You're able to feel the pulse of what they go through,
Yeah.
and you're able to kind of like relate and resonate with them on that level
Yeah.
where they're not just somebody that you spend like 30 minutes, 45 minutes with their child. They're sitting outside if they were coming outpatient, and then you just pass on like that. It really, really is rewarding.
Yeah, and private practice gives room for parents to actually see things that are hidden in the, especially when they come to the clinic, things that are hidden and those improvements that are not easily seen in the
Mm,
clinic. Not that they're not there, but because by the time they take the child home, they probably must have forgotten most of the instruction given or forget to follow the paperwork and everything. But when you are home, so most of the time, this program you create, you paste some of this program on the wall just as a reminder to keep. Because I remember a client I was seeing, a very little child, the standing regimen that I taught the mom, she kept forgetting. But what I did was to write those things on the standing box. I wrote them on the standing box. So when she comes in, I mean, from work, she will say, "Oh, this child needs to stand," and then they will have to place the child in the box, and that went a long way, helping them to track the improvement. Even very little improvement could be tracked, and it kept them going. And of course, building trust is very, very important in this regard because financially, many parents might not want to continue to commit because
of
of
course.
you
Yes.
know the difficulties seeing the improvement, especially around children with cerebral palsy, because you know how slow the improvement can be. So trust building was one of the first things that I focused on. Like, okay, not actually the financial aspect. Of course, it's part of it, but when you build trust to make parents believe that there can be improvement, even when there seems to be none.
It's
So,
it's a huge skill to do that, but in the sense that obviously the kind of patients or clients that we encounter, it's a lot to be able to get a lot of improvement that is obvious.
yeah,
So a lot of continuous education of families. You have to do a lot of that and advocacy. But also, it's just to talk about balancing job and private work wasn't it was a bit of a difficulty. You have to make sure that one doesn't interfere with the other. You are contracted to work. You're doing the work that is expected. You're doing it to the best of your ability, to the
yeah,
level at which is the same commitment that you put in your job that you also put in your private. There's
that's
no like you reserve one for the other. No, the same standard is what we ensure that we maintained, and we make sure that we stick by the rules of law, and everything was done to to the best of our ability, which was obviously there was no clear roadmap, especially on that side of the country that we were. There was
yeah,
no clear roadmap. We just had to create one for ourselves and
exactly.
establish. To also
So,
talk about like obviously when we returned, the financial uncertainty that came with it a little bit. It was difficult to, or it took a little bit of time to reinstate us back into the system.
yeah,
Obviously, because it wasn't as digital as it is right now. There
yeah,
was a lot of moving paperwork and all of that that was involved. A lot of offices you need to go knock.
yeah,
Somebody not actually piles of files lining up somebody's desk, not just moving your file to the next table to help you or to get things moving, and you just have to knock on different doors to get things
yeah,
sorted before we got integrated back. we integrate into the system to get you stepped up to the appropriate level that you need to be. Took a bit of time as well.
Yeah.
And it was just one challenge, especially financially, from one level to the next, to the next, to the next, because you're also trying to start to build life, isn't it?
And that's where building relationship with member of staff is also very important. Even people outside your area of practice, having good relationship goes a long way.
Yeah,
It was this
exactly.
relationship that actually, helped in a way. The good people of UBTH, admin, and they were very supportive. Even
Yeah.
though at some point we had to personally chase all our papers around. Yes, but the
hmm
encouragement was there that people were doing their job, and in the end, we got reinstated and practice continued.
Yeah. And around that time, life outside of work started evolving too. At some point, you stop chasing jobs and start building life.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And it's family, relationships, responsibilities. Because obviously we know life is one step after the other, and you think that you have this on, then you have to chase the next thing, and then you go to the next and the next. And I think that's something that we felt like, okay, this is the next step
yeah.
in life to pursue.
Yeah, yeah. And people were looking at us at that time like, oh, two of us. We've always done the same thing, went to the same diploma school, started working in the same area, and then went to India together. So everything was like, okay, now time to settle down. They are probably looking like, okay, they're going to settle down at the same time. And fortunately, you got ahead of me, and then yeah, I
I
still saw the video of that pre-wedding night in Lagos when we were
Yeah.
in the parking lot, like, toasted
Yeah.
our swimming.
I mean, I just felt it was the right time, it was the right moment. I had work life down, all of the chasing was done. I um, Private practice was all right. We've established that. We've moved from a one-room apartment to I've moved to like a
Three
three-bedroom
bedroom
apartment.
bungalow.
Uh, so I felt like it was the natural step, and I felt ready. And one of the things that I tell people is the fact that the one thing that I had no doubt in my mind about was the kind of father I wanted to be. Maybe probably stemming from my dad, most likely. And to do that, obviously, you have to be married. So I felt that was the natural step. And my wife was back from India then too, so there was no there was no point wasting any time, and we just got into it. That night was crazy. The night you mentioned, the night before, that we all went out, did all of that.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I remember that night because obviously I was the one driving. And everybody obviously I don't drink, but guys drink. It was a bachelor night and bachelor party. Before we even started, we started screaming at the people walking around the car in the traffic. But I
yeah,
remember vividly that God just averted the catastrophe that night because we
yeah.
were driving on Ikorodu Road, I think,
Mhm.
and we didn't know that. You know how Nigerian roads can be very funny with different
Yeah.
terrible road markings
But
and
the
signs. We
split
escaped that BRT.
lane. Yeah.
I know,
When you
like
split.
that
Yeah.
barrier that just suddenly appeared, and we could have just smashed in a night before
Um,
my wedding, and that was crazy. That was really really crazy.
yeah.
You just recently celebrated your anniversary as well.
That was the day, the
Yeah,
17th.
good.
Yeah, it was massive. I mean, it's. I've always been a pro marriage. Uh, back in the days, everyone that had been my friend, I've always said, oh, yes, I want to really be properly married and, continue to live. And I still keep telling my wife that the only person that even you, my wife, you can't separate us. You can't break this marriage. I mean, so not even you. So I will bind and lose you and all that. So yes, I've always been a pro marriage, and it happened. I met my wife in a very mysterious way, but yeah, it
Um,
was a lovely experience, I must say. So it was a lovely experience, and if we have to talk about that in a separate episode, that would take a
that's
whole hour to discuss. But eventually, we settled down, and then we became family people, and
yeah,
that's the
yeah,
whole sense of it.
and soon after, baby, babies. And one of the happiest day of my life, um, having my first child, um, and that refocus you and it reshapes you because we were before marriage we were living obviously like a bachelor that you are, um, work every day, spend a lot of time as you're finishing the government work, you're trying to do the private work as well, so much consumption of time. You didn't really care about time management because there was not really much you're going back home to do per se. Because at that time, I consumed movies like crazy as well, and and then but now there's family. You have to readjust and
Yeah.
balance that life and
Mhm.
manage that time and spread out all of these things because as much as you go from like what 7:30 you left home till like maybe 6 7 in the evening,
Yeah.
you want to create time for these little souls that you brought up and this amazing woman that you left at home as well. You want to
Mhm.
create time for family, and that was a bit of a challenge of readjusting, realigning purposes to fit into that lifestyle because it was a bit difficult balancing career and family
Yeah.
in our line of work.
Yeah, especially when you have to bring the emotion into play, sometimes your wife is looking at you as though you love work, you love your profession more than the family and everything. So you have to find a balance, yeah, as Kenny
Yeah.
said, and then you realize very quickly that your time is no longer just your own.
Of course,
You have
yeah,
to
it
share it.
isn't.
Yeah,
You have to plan it with somebody. Um,
yeah.
uh,
So
but
we became stable after India. Stability came in, both financial stability, family stability. We started all our life, and then now a long term planning.
of
Because you
course,
can't just say, oh, you're stable and then you remain where you are. We want to improve our life and the life of our extended family and all. So that's what brought in a long-term plan. Even though I had, and you also had the private practice, I was still not content. Like, oh, I just want to relax and not do more. I wanted to expand, and that's when I started looking at volunteering, even with other private organizations like Muscular Dystrophy Campaign of Nigeria. That's when I met them as a volunteer, and I'm still volunteering up to now. And you know, and
I
before we
mean,
move to the next episode,
yeah, I mean the long term planning was always for me at the time was about because I never really taught anything outside or doing anything outside of Nigeria. So it was always all the long term plan was within Nigeria. We joined cooperative at some point when we got married and thinking life, this is life. We need to start building. We need to
Yeah.
start talking about lands. We need to start thinking about building a house. We need to have a permanent abode rather than just renting or
Mhm.
leasing a place. So those were, like I said, it's just like it's life. You take it now. You have a family. You need to leave a lasting impact. You need to leave a legacy. You need to leave an inheritance, so to speak, for these humans that surround you. And that is where the mentality shift and the planning comes in. So you want to earn more so that when you earn more now, be able to either invest it, put it in something so that you don't have to work too long when your kids are growing up and
That's
when they
right.
need you the most. So those were kind of the planning that was shaping my mind. Like I said, we joined cooperative to acquire land. If we were still in Nigeria, we probably would have built
Yeah,
at
I
this
was,
point.
I was planning about that housing fund that was being deducted from our.
Exactly. But
I was making inquiries about how they could build maybe three-bedroom bungalow for me, and then I'll continue to contribute.
but that was the expected thing to do. That's the natural ascension in life. You just need to, and that's what we taught, and that was what we wanted to go. At the same time, you're also thinking a little bit about, do you want to be known only for being an OT?
Mhm.
And then you just want to, like, you want to create a more lasting impact, just because you need the sense of fulfillment. OT was fulfilling some things at some point, but obviously, as life goes on, you always have to have something you're chasing. If you
That's
don't
right.
have something you're chasing, then you are technically dead inside.
Of course.
You always have to have a purpose, and I think that's one of the things that have driven my aspirations. That you just keep, you need to aspire to something, whether work, whether life,
Yeah.
anything at all in life. You just need to want to think about something.
Yeah. So now when we look back
Hmm.
to post India experience, I kind of feel that that period was the turning point of the whole achievement that we've accrued right now. What's your thought about that? I
I mean,
mean,
I mean, it taught us that growth, and it taught us that growth is not just professional; it's also personal. All we've been chasing when we came out of diploma school was like
yeah,
wanting to be grow more in this OT profession that we've chosen.
yeah,
And I think after achieving or coming back from India, your mind goes to another level where you're thinking, okay, now
yeah,
we need personal growth. And I
yeah.
think that's where, yeah.
And the message is that for everyone listening, you must know that balancing career, private practice, and family is not as easy as ABC. But if we could do it and we enjoyed it, I believe anyone else can also be in our shoes. You know.
Yeah, of course. And but it shapes you when you're able
So
to get it down. It shapes you, or balancing it, or the process of balancing it shapes you in ways nothing else does. So
yeah. So I think on this note, we will be bringing this episode to an end. And thank you for joining us and for listening. And for those who will be watching in the future, we say good luck learning from our experience. Thank you,
yeah,
everyone. Yeah.
have a
Thank you. Peace.